Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. I'm looking at a very interesting book this morning which has come to us from Claritax books, and they are linked up in this particular case with Atlas Tax Chambers. Now this book is on residence, the definition in practice, between 2013 to 14, so it's a little old, this review, and there'll be some new books coming out, I'm sure, in due course. This is the second edition, and it's been written by our old friend Keith Gordon, who is an expert in this field. Elizabeth and I looked at this book in detail. We've looked at a range of the Claritax books, which are really first class for people involved in this field of law and practice. And we gave the title of this particular book, Barrister Keith Gordon offers a clear explanation of the tax residence rules for individuals from 2013 onwards. Now, since this book was published, we've had a general election and there will be changes taking place. But what purpose of my recording today, which is in the middle of 2015, is to explain the current book that's available and what probably may be happening in the future. But the question at the moment is what we've actually got with the actual issue of residence itself. It's a very small book, it's not big, it's a paperback. There's the front, the spine, and then there's the back. It runs to something like 120 odd pages. There's a very short index which you can see at the back. The structure of the book is slightly different in that you will get at the back of the book rather than at the front the table of legislation. So if you're looking for it, it's at the back, not the front. Now at the front of the book itself, there's the main front page there, and then you've got detail about Claritax itself. As I say, I've reviewed a number of these books. There are other books in the series. We are reviewing them and they do come out at regular intervals, so keep an eye open for the new editions. Detail about Keith Gordon there and about the publisher as well, and then there's a very nice dedication there which I like to mention. And then there's there are some useful abbreviations, always important in tax law, anything to do with accountancy. Then there's a preface to the first edition which set out what was being aimed at in 2013 at Lincoln's Inn. And then today, August 2013, the second edition. And things have moved on. Then you've got the table of contents itself, actually 10 chapters in total. And then there's a table of legislation, a few little cases at the back as well. Then there's the introduction. You see it's paragraph numbered, which you can see to find things quite easily. You do have some references to case law, which is, you can see that there probably. That's quite useful, but it's not overburdened. And there are some nice shaded areas for examples, which I found quite helpful too. There aren't any footnotes, but the paragraph numbering, I think, sums up what you're looking for. And then at the back in the index, it is actually paragraph numbered. That's how you find what you're looking for. It's a lovely book, and Keith Gordon is the expert in this field. He does explain things simply, and it's a delight to be able to review his works. So thank you, Keith. This is what we say. We're very fortunate to have the excellent specialist tax law barrister Keith Gordon offering us another first-class second edition of one of his tax guides from Claritax. And this time it's on residence, but do be aware of further changes in the political pipeline, because there will be changes, obviously, in the course of this Parliament between 2015 and 2020. The statutory test to determine tax residence for individuals was introduced from April 2013 onwards, and the rules are especially relevant for income tax and capital gains tax, but they can also apply in some circumstances for inheritance tax provisions and corporation tax purposes. Although I think it's important to remember that the law is as stated in September 2014 for this edition, and much has happened since that date with the intervening general election in May 2015. And whilst I'm recording this in the summer of 2015, I would imagine there'll be another edition on its way in due course. Gordon sets out his tax stall well here, because in certain cases an individual is conclusively resident or conclusively non-resident. And we need to know what this actually means. And in other cases, different tests will be applied based upon a combination of day counts, the individual's resident status in the earlier tax years, and the number of ties that a person actually has with the United Kingdom. There is now as well a statutory split year rule and anti-avoidance measures to consider, so this short guide is, we think, a must for you if you're involved in any of these matters. And of course you will know about the range of books that Claritax produce, which are first class. The book has been fully updated to cover the previous coalition government's Finance Act of 2013, and Gordon brings his usual clear and incisive analysis to present the new rules in a form that is at once accessible and practical. The listed updates which we have since the first edition appeared include the following areas, and I'm going to list them because it has main material about the book. So therefore it's the following. The text reflects the enactment of the Finance Act 2013 rather than the draft finance bill. It has all the statutory references updated accordingly. There's an abandonment of the term full-time work, and consideration is given to the new sufficient hours tests. There's a relaxation of the automatic UK residence rule for taxpayers who die having recently moved to live abroad, an important factor. The introduction of 2 new cases for split year treatment, and the separation of one case into 2 separate cases is well explained. The modification of anti-avoidance provisions, again important, for temporary non-residents, also covered. However, as we've said before, do note the date of the publication and the possibility of further change. So if you're a tax specialist, whether a tax accountant or a lawyer, advising on tax, you may already be familiar with the ever-growing stable of books on tax advice from Claritax. If not, what a discovery to be made, because it's a clear, incisive analysis here and a good commentary on the key provisions of the legislation as they affect clients, and it's a valuable addition to your tax library. And they're not expensive either, that's another point. In the words of the publishers, the range of Claritax books complements what is on offer from the larger tax publishers. And if you mark our words, these books, including this title, contain the most accessible and certainly business-like advice on tax you're likely to encounter. We've always felt that Claritax is rather a good name for these concise and very handy volumes, for they really do clarify the tax picture for you with plain, precise language and all the pertinent information you'll need to know across a range of highly specific areas of tax. Let me conclude by saying, typically, say Claritax, our books cover niche topics in greater detail or take a more practical approach to particular tax issues. And so it is with the latest Claritax title, which is Residence, the Definition in Practice. It's very much a practice-orientated book. Now in a second edition for the moment anyway, and it's, as I say, it's from an excellent tax expert from Atlas, James Keith Gordon. So thank you, Keith. It will no doubt be an invaluable reference point for all practitioners and those interested as we see further tax developments which take place from 2015 onwards. I'm sure that there will be a few more. Here's the book again, and as I say, very light paperback, and just opening it in the middle, defining key concepts and overview. It's very nicely structured. It's simple. I think one of the things I really liked about this is there's a lot of simplicity here, which makes it much easier to understand. There's a detail about Keith, and then the actual work itself is, we just start, the introduction to the test. It's always worth starting off in the historic perspective, establishing the principles, where we're actually going at the moment, and the way things have actually changed. So it does put everything in perspective. Anyway, thank you to Keith Gordon, thank you to Claritax, another excellent book for your library. Without them, it would make our lives a lot more difficult, so thank you. It's a great service you provide us with. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.